Hi, my name's Eduardo Rodriguez. I'm a PhD candidate at the Gund Institute, and I'll be talking about measuring forest value and the genuine progress indicator. Most goals that are worth pursuing first require some sort of vision. So you have to be able to imagine where you want to go in order to make incremental progress towards your desired outcome. Threats of deforestation and forest degradation, biodiversity loss, and climate change over the decades have inspired efforts to protect forests around the world. And many of these efforts come with really ambitious visions. The great biologist E.O. Wilson in 2014 called for setting aside 50% of the Earth's surface for other species to thrive as the only possible strategy to solve the extinction crisis. Now, vision alone obviously isn't enough. You have to also have a good understanding of where you are currently, and you have to be able to track your progress from your current state to where you want to end up. On a more local level, we can look at forests in New England, where we have both a good idea of current forest conditions, and thanks to our colleagues at Harvard Forest, also a very detailed vision of what our forests could look like 50 years into the future. New England is over 80% forested, and Vermont tracks that pretty closely. It's somewhere between 75 and 80%. And we can see from this figure on the left that about only a quarter of this total is actually conserved forest. The majority is actually currently unprotected. And this Wildlands and Woodlands vision, which was published in 2010, calls for a long-term conservation effort to retain at least 70% of the region in forest land permanently, free from development. Now, to shoot for some of these ambitious goals, we need mechanisms or processes, we need tools or indicators that help guide us in the right direction. And I think the GPI is one of these tools. And so very quickly, for those who are unfamiliar, the Genuine Progress Indicator is an index that's somewhat related to gross domestic product, but that makes adjustments for environmental, social, and economic factors to provide a much more holistic picture of overall progress and well-being. Vermont was actually the first state in the country that passed a law requiring GPI to be measured annually, and the Gund Institute is the institute that's tasked with producing these annual estimates. One of the GPI adjustments has to do with forest cover. And so in its current methodology, annual net gains or annual net losses of forest cover are either added or subtracted from GPI based on a very simplistic per acre dollar value. A big problem with this is that every acre in Vermont is assigned an equal value regardless of any sort of qualitative aspects. And so this methodology doesn't allow us to answer questions about things like stand age, things like biomass, forest fragmentation or connectivity, the amount of total preserved areas, etc. So I'm currently working on improving this sub-indicator using a three-tiered approach. The key is to incorporate measures that give us a better sense of forest quality while keeping the measure simple enough so that it can be replicated not just annually, but across states and regions as well. And so Tier 1 improvements consist simply of updating this outdated per acre value using much more recent studies of ecosystem service valuation. And Tier 2 improvements include qualitative aspects that are regularly measured by the Forest Service. So these are things like age class distribution, total above ground biomass, and total area of protected forests. And then in Tier 3, the improvements make use of spatial data, which allow us to track things like forest fragmentation and connectivity. So this GPI work is a component of my dissertation, which also involves forest succession modeling and landowner motivation surveys. I should say that it's a collaboration with others from the Gund and Rubenstein School, including John Erickson, Kimberly Wallen, and Sarah Piers, and others. I'd be happy to talk about these with anybody that's interested. But as a final note, I just want to say that as the Gund Institute for Ecological Economics transitions into the Gund Institute of Environment, I think it's really important that we work towards coming up with a common and a shared vision of where we want to go. And I'm excited to have even more people from a broader scope of disciplines and specialties join us in trying to solve some of these grand environmental, social, and economic challenges of our time.